I get it, you've probably stared at a spreadsheet of cheap, off-the-shelf NAS boxes, thought why not just grab the $150 model and be done with it, only to end up with a unit that chokes on a few simultaneous streams or makes a mess of your backup routine. That buyer's regret is the exact reason I'm sitting here with the Synology RackStation RS822 Plus in front of me, trying to figure out whether it feels like a smarter, less painful purchase, or just another expensive piece of hardware you'll wish you'd never signed for. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The RS822 Plus sits in a class of rack-mount NAS devices aimed at small to medium businesses, remote work teams, and power users who need more than a simple media server. It's not a hobbyist's plug-and-play box. It's a fully featured storage appliance that comes with a Ryzen R1500B 2.2 GHz quad-core CPU, 32 GB of ECC DDR4 memory, and 4 12TB SATA drives already sized for a 48TB raw pool. The 4 1GB ports let you aggregate bandwidth or segment traffic, and the DSM operating system bundle promises a suite of data protection tools, surveillance features, and virtual machine support. All that sounds impressive on paper, but the real question is how it behaves once you plug it into your office rack and start moving real files around. First-time buyers often hesitate because the price point is higher than the budget models you see on sale. The hesitation is legitimate. You're committing not just to the hardware cost, but also to the time it takes to install the drives, configure RAID, and set up the myriad apps DSM offers. If you're a home user who only wants a place to drop a few photos and stream movies, you'll likely end up paying for features you'll never use. On the other hand, if you're the IT lead for a boutique design studio, a legal practice handling large case files, or a surveillance system that needs to retain weeks of footage, the RS822 Plus starts to make sense. The first thing I noticed when I powered it up was how quickly DSM loaded, thanks to that Ryzen CPU, and the 32 GB of ECC memory. ECC isn't a buzzword for most consumer NAS boxes. It actually catches memory errors that could corrupt your data, which is a concrete safety net for any business that can't afford a silent data loss. The OS guided me through a straightforward quick setup wizard. Assign a static IP, choose a storage pool, and the system automatically suggested a RAID 6 configuration. That gives you tolerance for 2 drive failures, which is the sweet spot for a 48TB pool where rebuilding a 12TB drive could take days. In a real-world scenario I tested, I migrated a 10TB archive of video footage from an older NAS onto the RS822 Plus. The transfer hit roughly 850 megabytes per second when I used link aggregation across the 4 Ethernet ports, which is impressive for a 1 GB only device, because the aggregation essentially gives you a 2 gigabits per second pipe. The data landed safely, and DSM's snapshot replication let me take point-in-time copies without stopping the workflow. When I later simulated a drive failure by pulling one of the 12TB disks, the system automatically went into a degraded state, sent alerts to my phone, and began rebuilding onto a hot spare I had pre-installed. The rebuild progress was visible in real time, and the ECC memory helped keep the array stable throughout the process. Now, the strengths are clear: raw capacity, solid CPU, ECC protection, and a mature OS that can double as a surveillance station, a backup target, or even a lightweight virtual machine host. The bundled rail kit also means you can slide the unit into a standard 19-inch rack without buying a separate mounting solution, which saves both time and money if you're already set up for rack equipment. But the RS822 Plus isn't without trade-offs. First, the lack of built-in 10 GB means you're dependent on link aggregation to squeeze out higher throughput, and that requires compatible switches and proper configuration, something a small office might not have. Second, the drives themselves are not pre-installed. The listing notes, hard drives and memory upgrades included separately, not installed, installation. That sounds like a minor detail, but it adds a step for anyone who isn't comfortable opening a rack mount chassis, grounding themselves, and handling 12 terabytes drives. The process isn't rocket science, but it does add a few minutes of work and the risk of static discharge if you're not careful. Another practical weakness is the noise level. Because the unit houses 4 12 terabytes drives and a fairly robust cooling system, it's louder than a typical home NAS. In a quiet office space, the fans can be a distraction, especially during heavy rebuilds when they spin up to higher RPMs. If you plan to keep the unit in a reception area or a shared workspace, you might need to consider acoustic dampening or place it in a server closet. Who should buy the RS822 Plus? If you run a business that needs multi-terabyte storage, wants built-in data protection, and could benefit from the DSM ecosystem, think file sharing across departments, automated backups to cloud providers, or centralized surveillance.